Okay, guys, I am super excited to welcome our next guest to Let's Get Freaky. We have got Julia on the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here tonight. How are you doing?
I'm good. I am so excited to have you on the show. I've been listening to your show, Cosmic Peach podcast, which is absolutely awesome. Can you
Thank
tell us a
you.
little bit about your show and what got you into it?
Yeah, I have Cosmic Peach podcast. It's a conspiracy theory and paranormal type of podcast. I also cover like a little bit of true crime stuff, and I have been freaky, if you will, since I was a kid. I've always been interested in the paranormal, and my mom was a big conspiracy theorist, and I got it honest because she would read me books, and we'd watch Ghost Adventures and all these shows. And actually, I grew up in a haunted house. So when you experience something like that for yourself, you know that there's so much more that hasn't been explained, can never be explained. And that's kind of the passion behind my podcast, was just like, let's talk about it. There are unanswered questions here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love your show. It is everything that we love
Thank
at Let's
you.
Get Freaky as well, because we're all about conspiracies and paranormal. So I love it all, man. I grew up in a haunted
Mhm,
house as well, so I can totally relate to knowing that's why I'm here. That's what kicked me off as well. You know that there's
mhm.
something more, and that
Yeah,
and
and it's almost kind of like bonding to find other people who have went through something like that, because if you haven't, then there's no words to describe or explain. It just always sounds like you're a lunatic or something to that degree, all what I like to say is adding spices, like maybe a little something happened, but it's been dramatized, or there's no way. And I'm telling you straight up, some freaky ass shit was happening to me as a kid. And it's just so bizarre. I really haven't talked about it a lot because I feel like it's hard to believe, you
yeah.
know? Um, but I'm excited to get into it with you tonight. I don't know if you have any questions for me before I just start rattling off.
I'm excited to get into this. I've heard you. I've been listening to your show a lot. And I've also heard you on other shows, and you bring up that you've had paranormal experiences, and you've sort of given us a little bit. I've heard a little bit, and I was like, I want to know more,
Mhm.
man. So I'm excited to hear it all. What part of the US are
Yeah.
you in?
So right now I'm in Oklahoma, and the story though of my life, it really takes place more in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. But my sister, her husband got moved to Oklahoma for work, and I missed her, and other things were going on at the time in my life, and I wanted to start over fresh. So I moved to Oklahoma to be closer with her and start a new life, and I just haven't left. I just love it here so much. It's amazing. I actually, when you hear the word Oklahoma, you don't have positive thoughts. At least I didn't. I was like, I'm about to move to this old western town where there's tumbleweeds blowing across the road and people on horse and buggy or what. It's not like that at all. It's a metropolis. It's wonderful. I love
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
that sounds cool to me.
Yeah, it's nice. Cleveland is definitely a little bit more, well, it's on Lake Erie, so there's that.
That's cool.
And, there's a big music scene there that I love. It's really, really cool. It's like a artsy type of town to live in. In Oklahoma, not so much, but we have a ton of really good restaurants here, so I feel like that makes up for it, like home style cooking restaurants, and I don't know. I am a foodie person, so I'm cool with that.
Yeah, yeah, same. It's cool though, isn't it, when you move to a new place? I've recently done it as well, and you just know when when you feel good and you feel comfortable and you feel at home. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and, I've been other places before, and there are kind of like stereotypes around certain places that you live. And the people are much more friendly here, which I enjoy, because the farther north you go, like New York, they're kind of like fucking assholes. Like, oh, sorry, do you cuss on this show?
No, yeah, you can swear as much as you like. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no.
Yeah, they're just not as friendly and not
Yeah.
as pleasant to be around. But Oklahoma, everybody's like, "Hey sis, how you doing?" And it's really nice. But my family actually, and this is kind of a good segue to start the story. We did like a family tree thing. And I knew that the majority of my family on my mom's side was from Kentucky, and that they had grown up in Kentucky, but they didn't want to work in the coal mines, which is something that was very popular in Kentucky, that they would live in the hills and they would work in the fields and they would work in the mines. And my grandpa was like, I don't want to be a coal miner anymore. He was having health issues. It was really physically hard on him. So he moved our family from Kentucky to Ohio for like a business opportunity. Um, but we did this family tree thing, my sister and I, and all she started bringing up all this stuff that I had never heard before about our family. And it was so interesting to me that she could recall these stories that my grandma used to tell her and that she had heard. And it turns out that my grandmother's father, so I guess that would be my great grandpa, his name was Troy. And he was somewhat of like a mountain man, kind of shamanistic type of person.
Oh wow.
And he lived in the Appalachian Mountains in Kentucky. They had no running water, no electricity. They lived in a hut with a dirt floor. They grew their own food. They had almost like no outside connection whatsoever. And that's how my grandma grew up, actually. And people would come from all over to my great grandpa Troy, because he was said to have some type of ability where he would lay hands on you and whatever was ailing you would be healed. And um I called bullshit right away to my sister. I was like, yeah, right. And she said, no, it's actually very real. People would come all over, and in my family, we call them pawpaws. So she would say Pawpaw Troy would lay hands on the person, and whatever was wrong with them the next day or like a week later, they would be better. And it was crazy. And he had some little like rhyme thing that he would say. But he never told anybody what it was. And it said that that type of gift passes to the seventh son of the family. And before my great grandpa Troy died, he supposedly told this secret to my aunt, and she carried it to her grave. She never passed it on. And I'm actually the seventh grandchild, so I feel shortchanged a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you should have told me it was my
Wow.
turn. Yeah. So that was really interesting. And I really enjoyed doing this whole family tree thing. And it's actually going to be significant later on in my life story. Something else that we discovered, but my family's always been kind of like sensitive to seeing things and hearing things and getting feelings. And I kind of think that it stems back to uh maybe my grandpa or his father before him, or I don't know how far back it goes, but we are supposed to be from Ireland, and I'm a redhead, and so a lot of other
So
yeah, you're a redhead, so you get
we're
it.
Vikings. We're all Vikings.
Yes. And I think, I don't know if it has anything to do with that, but we had this thing in my family where before we would go out and do something, we would ask one of the older members of our family, do you have a bad feeling about this? Because if they said, yes, I have a bad feeling about this, we'd be like, no, okay, we can't do it, because my mom has a bad feeling about it, and 9 times out of 10 something horrible would happen, you know?
Yeah.
So, you could call that like some type of like psychic ability or whatever. It's not like they were predicting the future. They would just say, I have a bad feeling about that. And sometimes they would say, no, I don't really have a bad feeling about that. And we would go do whatever. But um my grandmother actually, so let me back up. My grandfather moved to Cleveland for business opportunities. He actually ended up getting saved and he started a church. He built the church with his own 2 hands. It was amazing. And he built a house next to the church. No one had ever lived in this house before. My family. He built the church, house right next to the church. It was an open door policy. He never locked his door. If anybody needed help, if anybody needed prayer, they would just show up at our house, not in the middle of the night, but you never knew who was going to be over there just needing prayer or support or food or shelter, whatever. And we also had an open door policy for our family. So after school, a bunch of the cousins would just be there and go there. And it wouldn't be weird for me to walk in the door and a random one of my cousins would be on the couch or at the table or eating a little Debbie, whatever. And that was normal for us. And that kind of plays a part in this whole paranormal aspect. But my grandfather actually began to develop Alzheimer's. So he was put in a nursing home, and those bastards like took everything from my family at the end. You know, they took the church, they took the house, they took everything. But before he passed away, my grandma needed help running everything. So myself and my mom and dad moved in to the house. And that's kind of where we started. Like for myself, I began seeing stuff in the house and getting weird feelings in the house. And what bothers me about it to this day is there were so many religious icons in that house. And I've told people this before, if you can imagine a Jesus picture on every single wall in that house or a scripture, something. My grandma even had this old ass antique oil lamp, and oil would come down and there was a little Jesus in the middle with a
Oh,
lamp.
wow.
And it was, it was extra up in there. Extra. And somehow, whatever was in that house, it was completely unaffected by religious icons. And I think that it was either demonic in nature or it was an extremely dark energy that had manifested within that house. And how the pastor and his wife with a Jesus picture on every wall somehow gets a demon in their house.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you explain something like that? It's wild.
Because a lot of the time when you talk to people that have having bad experiences with the paranormal, a lot of the time, even if you use the name of Jesus, that seems to stop it. A lot of people say that.
Oh yeah,
So,
and I grew up listening to my grandfather, and of course I'm a Christian, but he always told us there's power in the name. There's power in the name. So whenever we would get scared, we would pray and we would call out, Jesus, and it was like it was relentless. Whatever was in there was relentless. And I never wanted to talk about it because our family was kind of hush hush on that front. You wouldn't say, "Oh, by the way, have you noticed the demon that lives at Mama's house?" You're not going to say that. You're not going to say that. So I kept it to myself for the longest, but weird stuff started happening. I remember the first time it was just like I would see something walking down the hallway out the corner of my eye, look, nothing would be there. Then it started kind of escalating, and it would be me sitting in the living room watching TV. And just for the listeners to get a visual, imagine a rectangle and it's cut in half, and down the middle of the rectangle are these bars that separate the kitchen from the living room. So I can see from the living room into the kitchen through these bars, and I would see like my cousin Brooke walking around in the kitchen, which again would not be abnormal because it was, you never knew who was going to be home. And I would call out to her like, "Oh, hey Brooke," thinking she just got there or something. And no response. And then you kind of like sit up in your chair and you're looking like, is she still in there? Did, she go into the other room? No. I would see her like kind of in the kitchen moseying around. I'd be like, "Brooke, like, bitch, hello, talking to you." And she would, make eye contact with me, look at me, and walk back down the hallway. And a part of you wants to think maybe she's just having an off day, little PMS, whatever. Not going to push the issue. But so I waited, finished my show, whatever, got up from the couch, started walking around, and find out like Brooke was never in the house. She was never there, never came over, didn't know what I was
Wow.
talking about, was at her house the next town over.
And you saw her clearly there.
Yes, to the
Full,
point where I called out to her and knew it was her.
wow.
And so what bothers me a lot about it is the ability it had to assume the identity of living people. A lot
Yeah,
of times
man.
people say, "Oh, I saw my dead grandma, or I saw my dead grandpa, or I was seeing living people in the house." And
Wow.
I wasn't, the only one. It turns out that a lot of us were seeing living people in the house, but we didn't find that out till later. We did see on occasion my great grandmother who had passed away sitting in her chair in the living room, but we almost got like a peaceful feeling when we saw her because it felt like it was her, and it
Yeah.
looked like, obviously it looked like it was her, but it felt like her. The times when we would see living people and then find out that it really wasn't them, it didn't feel right. It
Yeah.
didn't feel, sometimes when you're really close with someone, you can almost tell when they've come into the room without knowing they've come into the room.
Yeah.
Um, that's just kind of a you pick up on like an energy from that person. And anytime that I would see one of these things, whatever they were, you wanted so bad to say like, okay, it could really be them, but then you find out, you should have went with your gut. It wasn't them. And my aunt actually came over one day after church, and she said she thought she saw my mom sitting in the recliner in the living room, and she kind of walked up behind the recliner and was going to like put her hands on my mom's shoulders and be like, "Hey, good to see ya." And whatever it was, right before she got up to the back of the recliner, the thing kind of turned around, looked at her, and was kind of mumbling something, some other language, and was like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah," and was looking right at my aunt. My aunt, of course, was like rebuking it and like praying and like pleading the blood of Jesus, and ran out of the house. And she told me all the way up into my adulthood, she was like, "I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it." It was horrible. It was traumatizing. And my grandma, people dismiss this because she was kind of developing dementia at the time. And sometimes with dementia, you can see things that aren't there. And a lot of the medications that they put you on make you see things that are not there. But she really hadn't developed dementia to that point yet. And she had just recently started taking medications when we moved in. And, in her way, she was trying to tell us she was seeing things in her bedroom. And in the morning on the weekends, because obviously I was in high school at the time, so I didn't see her every morning. But on the weekends, she would be sitting at the kitchen table and with her little coffee cup and not trying to be scary or anything. And she would say, "I keep getting these visitors in my room at night." and I'd be like, describe the visitors. And she said, well, they're different. Every night it's something different. But last night you were my visitor. And I said, what was I doing? And she said, well, you came in and you standing at the foot of my bed and you were dancing. And I was like, Mama, I fucking promise you, I did not come in your room last night and I was definitely not dancing at the foot of your bed. And she would say, like, clowns and all these, like, really just stuff out of your worst nightmares was coming into her room at night and standing at the foot of her bed and staring at her. And because
Jeez.
my grandma, you know, she grew up with no electricity, no running water, in a house with a dirt floor. She wasn't watching TV at night. She didn't have a fucking nightlight plugged in. I remember spending the night with her as a kid and being like, please don't make me sleep in Mama's room, because she liked it pitch black in there, no sound, nothing. And it was scary, even though it, like, even if it wasn't haunted, it was scary and at night in there because it was so quiet and like pitch black in her room. So for her to say she's seeing the door to her room open and things are walking in and standing there, and she's got no nightlight, no TV on, there's no trick of the, you know, oh, well, maybe you saw a shadow. No, she's seeing the shit walk into her room. I mean, break in if you have any comments or anything, but that was like one of the most terrifying things she had ever told me
Yeah, that is
about.
terrifying.
Yeah.
How often would you see family members that weren't really them? How often did that happen?
I would say that I lived there for 2 years, and it probably happened maybe 9 or 10 times.
That's a lot.
Mhm.
Wow.
Some were in more, clear type of situations, like seeing my cousin Brooke in the kitchen, and sometimes it would be like you'd hear them talking in the next room and think that they were home and go to be like, "Oh, girl, hey," and they're not in there. And then sometimes it
Wow.
would be like corner of your eye type stuff. I was petrified. Everybody in my family was petrified of the hallway. And we would actually, even on Thanksgiving, when the house was full and all of our family was over at the house, we knew what it meant if I walked up to one of my cousins and I was like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. They knew what that meant because it was kind of like a buddy system going down that hallway.
Yeah.
That's how terrifying it was. So I moved out. Me and my mom and dad moved out because my aunt said that she was going to take a turn essentially and live with mama. So my aunt and uncle and my cousin Brooke and my cousin Brittany moved into that house, and I didn't ever tell Brooke anything about me seeing her or anything like that, other than her knowing I asked her if she had came over. I would be like, hey, did you come over? And she would be like, no. And I was, you know, you think at the moment you'd be like, you would tell them that you saw a ghost or but you don't, because it just sounds so ludicrous that you keep it to yourself. And my family wasn't the type to be like, oh, we're seeing demons. So my aunt and uncle and my cousins move into the house, and my aunt and uncle make a bedroom in the basement. Don't get me started on the fucking basement. They make a makeshift bedroom in the basement. And my cousin Brittany's in one bedroom, my other cousin Brooke's in one bedroom, and my grandma is in her bedroom. It was so terrifying living there for my cousin Brittany, who's actually the older one, and she's going to kill me for saying this, but she told me that she used to keep empty cups in her room because she knew if she woke up in the middle of the night and had to pee, she wouldn't have the balls to walk down that hallway and go to the bathroom, and she was literally pissing in empty cups in her room.
Don't blame her, man. Wow.
That's how petrifying it was, though, to live there. I don't even, like I said in the beginning, there's almost no words to describe that type of terror when you
Yeah.
know I can't even go to the bathroom by myself.
Yeah.
That's how fucked up it was. And she would say, you know, she saw Brooke walking around. She saw Brooke a lot. She saw Brooke more than I did. And as sisters, you would think that it would be, you know, you could tell if it was your sister or not. But it was the same thing I was saying. It was so convincing. You would be like, damn, I really feel like I saw her in there. And so she would say she saw her drawers of her dresser opening by themselves, and her stereo knobs would just turn on and click on the radio by themselves. And she would see family members walking around. Um, and then on one occasion, she actually saw Brooke up and walking around in the kitchen, and then go back down the hallway. And then Brittany went into Brooke's bedroom, and she had been asleep the whole time. And so it's like she's in the house, but not in the house, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So um my aunt, you know, she used to have like terrible nightmares there. I always had terrible nightmares staying there, that something was going to get me, or that I was opening doors in the hallway and that I was like falling out into space and stuff. Or I would open the bathroom door, the creepy bathroom door in the hallway in my dream, and I would like fall into another dimension or something. And I would wake up and be, you know, covered in sweat, like feeling like I was gonna throw up. I felt like there was something in the room with me when I would wake up from a nightmare like that. And it was just crazy stuff like that. But my sister, while my aunt was living there, my sister actually came to visit and spend the night. And she wanted to sleep in my grandma's bedroom because my grandma kept saying she was seeing stuff at the foot of her bed and all this. And my sister was like, okay, well, I'm going to come over. I'm going to visit. I'll do a sleepover and I'll stay in Mama's room to see if indeed she's getting visitors that night. And so she said everything was fine. Middle of the night, she finally drifted off to sleep, and she said she can't remember at what point she woke up, but she woke up and the bedroom door had kind of cracked itself open, and there was a nightlight in the hallway that just illuminated it enough so you could kind of see in the hallway, but not everything. And she said she saw someone that looked like Brooke, my cousin Brooke, in the hallway, but didn't feel like Brooke in the hallway. And it was just standing in the crack between the door and the hallway, and it was just standing there.
That's terrifying.
So I know. And my sister said she was just frozen. And it kind of backed up. I'm not shitting you guys. This next part, you're going to tell me I'm fucking crazy. I'm just repeating exactly. I know she wasn't lying because I saw the look on her face when she was telling me this story, and she was horrified. She said it backed up from the door frame, backed up into the hallway, and kind of did like one of those exorcist type things, and like bent itself over backwards in the hallway, and like walked,
Oh
like
man.
just faded away into the darkness of the hallway.
What, on all fours? Like,
Yeah.
oh, geez, that is
She said,
terrifying.
and it looked like my cousin Brooke. That's the craziest part.
Yeah. Wow.
She said that she was so terrified. She started pleading the blood of Jesus all over it and praying. And she was so terrified that she laid there in the soldier's position until she saw light coming through the window. Because she was like, I wasn't gonna move. I wasn't going into the hallway going after it. I thought it might come back and get me. And there was no, she was like, I literally laid there stiff as a board in that bed until I saw sunlight breaking through the window. God only knows how many hours she laid there like that, just terrified.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And my sister is actually not the kind of person who would make something like that up. And it was just always something, and I've said this on podcasts before, but the house was really close to Lake Erie. And, water holds memory. And there was a bunch of like really old trees and shit where that house was built, and they cut all the trees down and whatever to build that church and that house. And so did they disturb something on the land? Did they build on top of like a portal situation? I don't know. But there was always like weird UFO sightings, like near Lake Erie. And if you stood on the back porch and looked out over Lake Erie, you would see like weird lights in the sky and like weird stuff coming up out of the lake. And I almost feel like that area was just compacted with either dark energy or some type of extraterrestrial something, which I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theory aspect of this, but do you think that there could be like portals?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's definitely areas as well, for whatever reason, seem to have a lot of high strangeness going on. And and that could be, is there portals there? I mean, some people say there's a portal in every house. Like we've all got a portal. I don't know, but
I've heard that too, and I kind of want to agree with it because I feel like every house I've ever lived in, the farthest back bedroom is fucked up. Every house I've
really
ever lived in, I feel like the farthest back bedroom in whatever house I happen to live in is got fucking creatures in it. But again,
interesting.
um that kind of opens me up to this other part of the story and why I feel like it could have been the location the house was built. But looking further into it, it turns out that it's just my family, and that it had actually followed my family from a previous house before that
Oh,
one.
wow. Wow. So this activity was
So
going on somewhere else before.
before, and I never knew about it. I wasn't even alive yet. I had to hear all this stuff from older members of my family who were just starting to feel comfortable enough to start mentioning it. So the house before that house, my mom and my aunt lived in at separate times. My mom and dad lived at that house before I was born, and then they moved out, and my aunt moved into the house because I think my grandpa owned it actually, and he just rented it out to them. So, while my mom was staying there, she said she would hear little footsteps come up to the side of her bed, and she would think it was my sister, and she would like throw the covers open and feel something get into bed with her, and then like go to like grab my brother or sister, and nothing would be there.
Oh, wow.
And she heard like somebody talking upstairs, go upstairs, then she'd hear somebody talking downstairs, and just your normal run of the mill, like weird haunted house type shit while my mom lived there. But then my aunt moves in and it like ramps up. She's starting to get like suicidal thoughts. She was hearing voices, and they were like telling her to like kill herself and shit, which is totally out of character for my aunt. Um, and the most disturbing part is she also heard little footsteps coming up to the side of the bed and thought that it was one of my cousins and would throw the covers open and nothing, like there would be no one there, but she would feel like a little body get into bed with her.
Wow.
Um, but the crazy thing is, while they were living there, my cousin Brittany as a baby would just be sitting up. She's like a toddler at this point, and she would just start violently throwing her head into the ground and just like bashing her. They had to put a helmet on her. And they
Wow.
thought that she had something wrong with her. They thought that she was like, I don't know what they thought. But they took her. They were like, there's nothing wrong with her. We don't know why she's doing this. And then I asked my sister and my mom, and they remember her doing that as a baby. And they were like, it didn't look like she was actually doing it though. It kind of looked like her head was being forced down. So that's already going on in this house before they build the new house. And simultaneously, as all this is going on, I have another aunt and cousins living in another house, and they're seeing like black cloaked things walking around their house and floating above them while they're sleeping. And like just the weirdest my other aunt and my other cousins living in the house with the black cloaked thing, they actually couldn't stay in the house by themselves because they would see this cloaked and they would like run outside and stay outside by themselves until somebody else got home. But the amount of paranormal stuff that was going on and that we were never talking about with each other, I
Yeah.
feel like for one, it kind of stems from growing up in a very Christian household, and we were told and believe that we have power over entities like this, and why are we being so heavily affected by it? And my sister has always, it's been like constant for her. Every house she's ever lived in has had some type of weird paranormal activity. And my sister always has these dreams where she's pregnant, and then a member of our family like will be like, "Oh, I'm pregnant." It's just the weirdest stuff, and I feel like it has just followed my family around. Um, and some families are just like that, you know? It could go back to my great grandpa and this like shamanistic ability that he had. Um, but what's so strange about this and why I feel like it's so important to mention is because it's like a curse. And um my grandpa, my grandma, my aunt, my mom, and my other aunt all died exactly 3 years apart and in the order that they got saved. So, it's and they all died weird, okay? And young, in my opinion. So, my grandpa, he's the first to get saved. Oh, actually, I take that back. Hang on. My oldest aunt, she got saved, and then she took my grandpa to church. He got saved. Then my grandma, then my mom, and then my youngest aunt. And that is the order that they died in. So my grandpa didn't even die first. My aunt died. 3 years later in the same season, my grandpa died. 3 years later in the same season, my grandma died. 3 years later in the same season, my mom died. 3 years
Uh,
later in the same season, my aunt died. And there has always been this weird thing about threes in my family. And it's just weird because like I wasn't necessarily planning on doing an episode today because it's my mom's birthday.
oh,
And then you
no.
had messaged me, and when you scheduled it, I was like, I'm gonna talk about her, and it's her
Oh,
birthday, and he has no idea about that. And so just weird paranormal type things have followed my family around forever. And don't get me wrong, me and my mom were best friends. I love her so much. I think about her every single day. And it's just, I hope so. I don't want to sound morbid, but I've talked because it's a serious concern of mine to my older cousins because all of our moms have passed away. And I said, I hope this is not like some fucking kind of Final Destination shit and it starts picking us cousins off. Like maybe it'll reverse and it'll go me first because I'm the youngest and then like pick us off like that
Oh
way.
man.
And you know, my sister's always like, no, no, no. Let's just call it a generational curse and that it's not, but we're not affected by it. Because while we were doing this family tree thing, and she started telling me all this stuff about my great grandpa that I never knew, and like maybe that's why we have all this paranormal stuff happen to us. We found this death certificate of a son that my grandmother gave birth to, and it was like on the 3rd of the month, and he was alive for approximately 3 hours. And just we like threes. It's always like a 3 thing. And
Yeah.
she had 3 daughters. And
Wow, man.
I don't know, like I've never met a family who has had so much like really crazy negative stuff happen to them and be simultaneously like trying to save people at church and like casting demons out of people. And I've said before that maybe my grandpa like casted a demon out of somebody and it followed him home, but that wouldn't explain like all the activity prior to him getting saved. So I don't know. It's just like one of the most mysterious things that I've ever lived through.
Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear that it's your mum's birthday today. And
No,
I'm not
actually,
sorry to it, but I mean, I just
yeah, no, I am so happy to get to talk about her any chance that I get, and I thought that this was a really great way of telling like our story. You know,
yeah,
it's not just my story, it's like our story. Mom's and my whole family's story. Um to this day my sister still has weird paranormal stuff happen to her, and I do too, but I so the most recent thing that happened, and like I said, I feel like every house that I live in, the backmost bedroom is full of fucking creatures or something. You know when you say kids are afraid of whatever is under their bed or the thing in the closet, I feel like every house I've ever lived in, the farthest most bedroom is that thing. The thing in the closet or like the thing under
yeah,
the bed.
yeah, you get that vibe.
And yeah, it just so in this house that I'm living in right now, it just so happens to be right next to my bedroom. And I want to say like 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, I went to bed by myself. I would remember it extremely vividly. I was watching Ghostbusters Part 2. It was the fucking part where they were drilling in the street, and
Great
I
film.
was like, I love that movie, and I
Yeah,
was thinking to myself like, "Oh my god, I fucking love this movie so much," and I kind of felt myself becoming a little bit drowsy, and I love falling asleep with the TV on. That's my muse. I cannot sleep in silence. I don't know why,
no, I'm the
but
same. I'm the same.
I love so I'll like turn on a movie I've seen a million times and just fall asleep to it. That's
Yeah,
my jam. So I'm watching Ghostbusters Part 2. They're drilling in the street. I'm like, oh, I love this movie. Getting drowsy. Close my eyes. The next thing I know, I'm waking up and it's pitch black in my room, which can only mean one thing. My husband decided that it's time to go to bed. He came in and turned the TV off and like turned the bathroom light off because I leave lights and shit on. I'm a scary person. I'm like, lamp, bathroom,
yeah,
TV, all the lights. And so I was like, well, he's probably getting ready to get into bed, and which is why he turned all the lights off. And so I'm just laying there and I'm trying to go back to sleep, but I'm kind of in the twilight or whatever where I'm kind of asleep and kind of awake, but I do feel him get into bed with me. And so I was laying facing the ceiling and he was on his side next to me with his face um facing like the side of my face. and I just felt like him lick the side of my face. And I was like, first off, I'm tired. I don't know what you're trying to get started, but it's not happening. And he started like chuckling and laughing. And I was like, it's not fucking funny. And that don't do nothing for me. Like licking the side of my face. Like, why the fuck would you lick the side of my face? And so I'm just like annoyed, and he's like chuckling. And I roll over with my back towards him because I'm like, fuck off, and I'm now facing the bedside lamp. And out of the corner of my eye, I see him walking at the foot of my bed and flip the light on in the bathroom and go into the bathroom and close the door. And I'm like, look over. Nobody's been in the bed with me. The covers are totally straight. I have a weighted blanket. I would know because it would be all ruffled up where he was laying.
What?
I have a weighted blanket. It was completely straight. The only person that had been in the motherfucking bed was me.
So you felt someone lick your face and you could hear them
Oh, and I saw
chuckling?
him. It looked like my husband. Sounded
Oh,
like him.
man.
And then I saw him walking at the foot of the bed. He flips the bathroom light on, goes in, closes the door. I immediately reach over and turn my my lamp on. And I called out to him and I was like, "Are you trying to scare me?" And he was like, "I was in the other room shitting. Is that scary to you?" And I was like,
Wow.
"So not only were you not in the bedroom, you were down the hallway shitting in the other bathroom this whole time? So who was in
Wow.
the bed with me?"
That's crazy.
That was like 2 or 3 months ago. That's why I say, like, it never has stopped. It's
Yeah, because
never stopped.
that's the same sort of experiences you were having in the other house where you're
Yes.
seeing someone that you know.
Yeah.
When that, did you get a vibe that it was, I mean, did you get a vibe that it
The
was something nasty, or, I mean, that's
the only thing I
crazy.
can think of is because I was kind of like in a twilight state where I was like kind of dozed off and kind of awake, but then like when I felt like the thing on my face, I was like, okay, and I woke up a little bit more. And then I saw somebody walking at the end of the bed and I was like, "Oh, I'm all the way awake now because what the fuck was that?" And,
Wow.
he said that I was high. And I was like, "One weed gummy does not get you that motherfucking high
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you start seeing
To
that
feeling
shit."
licks on your face, man.
Right?
Wow.
So that's why I say, and my sister all the time will say that she feels things and hears things in her house. She's the only person that's ever lived in her house. So I'm really sold on the fact that it's something that has followed my family for generations and it's like attached to my family. Um and I used to have like really weird feelings about stuff, and then like, a lot of people do. I think everybody is a little bit psychic in some ways. But I remember being on we were supposed to go on like a field trip at school, and I told my mom, like, it was like parent drop off. I didn't ride the bus to school. She dropped me off. And I was like, had the door opened about to get out and go into the school. And I just said, like, I don't feel like I should be going on this field trip today. And we were going to go to the zoo. Like, you would think I'd be so excited as a kid to go to the zoo. And I just felt like I wanted to just go back home. And my mom was the type of mom that was like, "Oh, you got a bad feeling? Close the door. We're going home." She took me home. And, God only knows what could have happened to me, but I've always just kind of been more aware of my feelings about stuff
Yeah,
and people. You can walk into a room and know exactly the kind of person someone
100%.
is without saying a fucking word to them.
Yeah,
Just a feeling you get. And I'm not saying judge someone off their appearance because that's wrong. You shouldn't judge people based on their appearance, but you can get a legitimate vibe off of
yeah,
someone
for sure.
and know that something's off.
It's like you can meet someone, say at work, for example, and you talk, you get on fine, but you just get this feeling about them that there's something not right, and you don't say it to them. Well, some people might, but yeah, you're right.
Right.
You just know, you just get a vibe that something's not quite right with them. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and the basement at my grandma's house, it was your stereotypical creepy basement. And there wasn't anything. I mean, my aunt eventually made a makeshift bedroom down there, but it was just open. It ran the length of the house, and there was just like these cinder block things and little tiny windows. Um, and anytime we would go down there, uh, I would just see what they refer to now as orbs, but anytime I've ever seen an orb being captured on a paranormal show, they don't see it until they review the footage. I saw these things floating around down there with my eyes. They had their own luminance. They were green and yellow and just floating all down in the basement. And I just feel like it was able to shapeshift. Maybe that energy that was down there that was like floating and just stewing and manifesting in the basement was able to take on a human form. But like only the form of people it had seen, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
family members.
that's terrifying.
And it, I would have dreams where to this day, and my cousin Brittany, we have a cousin group text, and sometimes we'll text each other and be like, I had this dream about the house, and we still to this day have dreams where stuff is like coming up out of the basement and getting us, or there's something that we can't see in the house and it's like chasing us and it's gonna get us. And it's the same kind of dreams I had when I was living there. um and my mom actually would sleep in the bed with me sometimes. I was just so terrified. And I just feel with them dying in that sequence and everything like that, there's got to be something to it. I know I'm not crazy about
No, no.
thinking that way, but I've just never met another family that's been like plagued by it, I guess.
See, I don't really believe in coincidences anymore. I think there's too many of them. And in that
Mhm.
situation, with every 3 years, I mean, that's not a coincidence. It can't be. I mean, that's
It can't be. And right before my aunt died, and she passed away recently actually in the 3-year timeline. Um she told me that she felt like she had been tormented her entire life by whatever this thing was. That it didn't matter where she lived or whatever she was doing, that it was following her. My sister had made similar remarks and has still made similar remarks that she feels like it's in whatever house she's in, it's there.
you're still getting that same
And
activity.
mhm, yeah. My older cousin Brian, he actually came on my podcast, and I recommend anybody to go and listen to this episode because it'll make things make a lot more sense. But it's called Campfire Ghosties. And I actually thought he was bullshitting me, that he was actually going to come on and talk about some of the stuff that had happened to him while he was growing up. Um, but he did. And some of the stuff he said that night, I had never heard him say before, because our family just did not talk about stuff like that. And something about just being on a podcast made him feel comfortable. Hey, I'll just share this with everybody and get it off my chest, kind of like a confession. And he just went through all this crazy stuff that had happened to him as a kid and growing up. And I even asked him, I was like, is it just us? Or, but I mean, even with your experience, do you feel like after you moved out of that house, it was
Yeah,
over?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I was talking about it the other day. So we left that house when I was 12 years old, moved to a new house. Wasn't too far away from that house, to be honest. It was only like a 10-minute drive from the other house. But I said the first night that I stayed in the new house, in my new bedroom, I remember laying there with the lights off, which was weird because I was always scared of the dark, always felt like something was there. And I remember laying there and just feeling safe and just thinking,
Mhm.
this is weird that I'm feeling so comfortable in the dark. I remember thinking
Yeah.
that, and I remember it being a big deal at the time. So I suppose that was because we'd moved to a new place and whatever it was. I mean, weird stuff did start happening in that house as well as time
Mhm.
went on, but it wasn't the same as the other place, which was had a bad vibe. You know, you'd see things in the corner of your eyes. I did actually see a ghost in my room in that old house. But yeah, I just
Was it
found it.
like a shadowy
No,
figure
I saw a full apparition of a man in my old
in
bedroom
your room?
when I
Yeah,
was 10
see,
years old.
that's the kind of shit that fucks you up though.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I'm here now.
Mhm.
That's why I do this show.
Right, yes.
She's like therapy.
So, do you think, like, sometimes I say houses have personalities, and like really super old houses, you know,
Yeah,
somebody died in there, somebody's gotten, raped or whatever, some of these like
bad
Victorian houses
energy.
that are
Yeah,
100 years old.
they've seen
So,
some
was
bad
it like
stuff.
was your house like an old house, or was
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a super old. It was. I mean, I don't know exactly how old it was, but it wasn't a super old house. You know, it wasn't that old. It was right near a graveyard, so I don't know
Mm.
if that played a part. I know that the man that we bought the house off, the lady that we bought the house off, her husband died in that house.
Oh,
So I don't know if there
shit,
was something,
see?
but the guy that I saw in my room as a kid looked just like William Shakespeare. Like if I see a picture of William Shakespeare now, it just takes me back to that. I don't think that was William Shakespeare in my room, but he had that sort of
It
look. It
looks
was
like
that
it.
sort of era. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird that you say that because I had a guest on my show and he grew up in a haunted house too, and he always said like he never really talked about it because people thought he was bullshitting or whatever. And he said that he and his dad found this big hole that was dug in their basement, and it was covered with like a piece of wood, and they moved the piece of wood and there was stairs down in
Oh
this whole
wow.
like underground tunnel thing that they found. And then somehow or another, and it was in Alaska, by the way, and
Wow.
somehow or another they found out about this serial killer who had lived in that neighborhood, but they didn't know for sure if it was the house they lived in, but was like that where he was like keeping bodies or something like that. You know, that kind of stuff could actually be residual. That kind of energy leaves a stamp on a
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So
Did they go into that? Did they walk down the stairs and
they said that they went down and there was like another level that went down farther, and they went down the next level. They went down further into the tunnel, and
jeez.
it broke off into like this other deeper tunnel. And at that point they were like, "Oh, fuck this." And they got back, they
Wow.
climbed right the fuck back out the hole, covered it back up, and they never they
That's
never talked about
crazy.
it again.
You do hear
Yeah.
about these towns that have got like all interconnecting tunnels where the houses can sort of connect somehow.
Yeah.
That's weird, man.
Yes. And he said when he was a kid, obviously, I could put you in touch with this guy because his story is crazy. He's also a stand-up comedian, so it's hard to not laugh at his pain because
Yeah.
he makes it funny. But
Yeah.
he said he was just playing tag or something with his brothers in the house, and they went down into the basement and they were like roughhousing or whatever, and he got paralyzed at the bottom of the stairs, and he said he couldn't move for like maybe 10 minutes, and his brothers had already ran back up the stairs, And no, he was just like, I couldn't even call out like, "Hey, I'm down here." He
Wow.
laid there stiff as a board for like 10, and he said it finally just released him and he never went back in the basement again, but it was like down where that hole was.
Jeez, man. That's
So
crazy.
I've heard from so many different people. And again, like I grew up watching Ghost Adventures and Dead Files with that Amy psychic chick, and I actually remember watching like the first episode of Ghost Hunters, those guys who were like fucking plumbers or whatever, the taps. I watched like episode 1 of Ghost Hunters. I was totally into all of that stuff. But it's different when you're there versus watching someone on a night vision camera, because you watch it on TV and you're like, I don't think I would be that scared if that happened, or I don't think I'd be that scared if I was in the pitch black. And you would, trust me, and you'll never fucking be the same if you have something like that happen to you.
Yeah, for sure. These things, as it has with you, they stay with it stays with you your whole life. Like you can't once
Mhm.
you see stuff like and feel and experience stuff like this, it changes you. You know that there's more and that the possibilities are endless, really, you know?
And there's some type of like embarrassment and shame around it, because like that most recent thing that I experienced, I only posted about it. I posted a video about it on Patreon, on my Patreon, because it's just like, do you share this with the masses? Because what will people think of you if you share that with the masses?
Yeah.
And I actually said that I think it's because the day before that happened, I did a podcast episode where I was talking about the Nephilim. And this is probably out there for some of your listeners unless they've dove into more conspiratorial type of subjects, but I recorded a 4-part series actually on the Nephilim. And while I was recording that series, it took me about a month or a little more. I had non-stop horrible things happen to me while I was recording those episodes.
Wow.
And then when I published them, I scheduled them all out, put the timestamps on all of them when they should come out, put all the little intros and all the shits on them, and I was done with it. It stopped.
Interesting.
Nothing happened for like the longest time. And then I was invited on someone else's show to discuss the topic. And the next day that happened.
That's interesting.
And the whole time I was recording those episodes, I was having audio malfunction, video malfunction. I recorded one, I said it in the beginning of whatever episode it was, but it was like almost a 2-hour long episode of just me talking, which is very hard. I don't know if you ever do solo shows, but it's not for the faint hearted, just sitting there speaking to a microphone for 2 hours. And the whole recording like for 2 hours. It didn't
Wow.
capture
It
a
didn't
word
take.
that I said. No.
I was just going to say as well, sometimes in the past when I've talked about the Nephilim and stuff like that, things start going wrong with the internet. Things start going
Yeah.
wrong with it. And it just froze for a second there. And I was like, oh no, here we go. Here we go.
I'm telling
It does
you.
happen. Yeah, it does. There's certain
And
subjects
then,
that you talk about and you look into, things start happening.
I'm a truly selfish human being, and I feel like I cover things on my show in a very specific way. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to listen to anybody else's episode on it because I feel like I killed it. And why should I? Bleh. But then, I have to take a step back and have some, humility. And I listened to an episode, I think it was someone sent me on the Confessionals podcast, and they were discussing the Nephilim, and they said, well, you just put these episodes out, you would love this one, you got to listen to it. And he was talking about the same fucking thing. Audio
Yeah.
problems,
Yeah. Audio's going
total loss
now.
of internet, total.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
And there was on that episode, there was 4 or 3 other podcasts that were having the same problems as well, weren't there? Something like that. They was
Yes.
all
Yeah.
experiencing the same technical difficulties that never happened until they were hitting that
And
subject.
it happened to me, and I didn't even know that episode existed of the confessionals. And I
Yeah.
thought I was just like imagining things at one point. I was like, could it possibly be that I'm just having really shit luck right now?
Well,
But no.
even us, we've had 2 just talking about it then. I know this might be a coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidences. The computer's
Same here.
has frozen twice, and it's been absolutely fine the whole time. But we started talking about this, and you get a couple of freezes. It's weird, man. There's something to it for sure. We froze again.
That's why on my podcast, I can't help. Did it really?
You froze again, yeah. We've been fine the whole time. And now we're talking about.
Okay, look. All right,
saying
I'm
the
done
Nephilim
talking
word.
about the Nephilim. I'm done talking about it. I will not bring it up again. Please go back to being normal. But that's why
It's
on my
weird.
podcast, I have to talk about paranormal stuff because it goes hand in hand. If about all this stuff that's unseen, you have to talk about.
Our signal's gone.
The paranormal, because that's what
our
these
signal's gone
entities
really
are.
weird.
Shut up.
It has gone really weird. It keeps
Oh my God,
freezing.
wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but it keeps freezing. It's really weird, and it's been fine the whole time.
Do you know what
until
Zoom just told me?
What's that?
Your internet is unstable. I was about to take a screenshot of it.
And I've got full internet at the moment. That's so weird that we've started talking, and that's happened there and then. I mean, it's so weird.
I could not make this shit up.
Yeah. Wow, it's still freezing.
So that's why I say, no,
Yeah.
stop. Is it really?
It is. But the paranormal and conspiracy, I think you can't really have one without the other, because there is a connection. Like, you have to talk a bit of conspiracy if you're going to talk paranormal. There just is a connection.
Yeah, and I'm really passionate about it. I keep a lot of stuff to myself as far as every time I think something paranormal happens to me, I don't just go out and blast it everywhere. But that one a couple months ago, I was like, oh, please. This is not my life right now.
That's terrifying.
Think about that. Are you married?
Yes, yeah.
Think about your wife crawling into bed with you and then being like, oh my God, it's not even her.
I wouldn't mind a lick on the face, but yeah, for it not to, it is weird. It's very strange.
Think about that.
And then you heard the giggling as well when you were like, leave me alone. Yes. That's mad.
So I guess you would say, like, I'm a sucker for, if I'm at home by myself, I'm like extra conscious of every little creak or crack in the house, and everybody's kind of guilty of that to some degree. But I do self-inflicted trauma, and I'll be at home by myself and watch Ghost Adventures and Dead Files and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, it's totally in my house right now. And what I want people to understand is, like, there's a difference between psyching yourself up and being like, I'm watching something scary, therefore there's something scary going on with me, and me just being asleep and not scared whatsoever, and it being a completely normal night and something like that happening. It's different.
Yeah. You know.
And again, following the episode, I will not say because I don't want any more internet problems, but it was following that episode.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Super interesting.
And I have a couple episodes that I've done on several shows. And I've talked about the Laurel Canyon a bunch. Never had any issues. Never had any issues when I talked about Jim Carrey on like 3 different shows. Nothing. It's just that
Yeah.
one topic that's causes
It's
problems.
so strange. And it's happened on numerous shows. I know 3, like
Mhm.
5 other shows that's happened to as well that talk about that. So
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, but if you have any questions or anything like that, I feel like I kind of gave you like a taste test of like everything that's kind of went down with me. When I've talked about it before, I kind of went back and I had written down on paper some of the stories my family members had told me, so I might be forgetting one or two, but that's what I can remember, and just what I can remember is crazy. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything, I'd be happy to dive into further detail. I should text my sister sometime and have her join a podcast like this because she
Yeah.
remembers
Get her on.
everything.
Your cousin there was a cousin that you used to see a lot.
Hmm.
Was there a reason that it might have been her that you saw a lot? Was there any connection there that
She has asked all of us that, and it has freaked her out. It still freaks her out. She actually won't talk about it in front of us because she'll be no, it's not just, when my grandma said she saw me and I knew it wasn't me, it gave me like real heebie-jeebie creep vibes. But for multiple family members to say they see her, I saw her, her own sister, like that's, she'll be like, don't talk about it. She won't. She'll be like, I don't, why? And she'll say, she was like, I was the one that always went to vacation Bible school. And I was the one that was always like, I never did anything. I think at the time she was maybe 15. So like there
was
was literally nothing going on, that it just picked her. She said
yeah.
that it's because she was the holiest out of all of us. That's what she said.
Was she having experiences herself? Did she experience anything?
Yes, but she was having more so nightmares and night terrors and sleep paralysis, and they actually took her to the doctor because they thought there was something wrong with her because she just couldn't wake up in that house. She was asleep all the time. Like after they moved in there, as soon as she came home from school, she'd be knocked out somewhere. Just
Wow.
knocked out.
It's like
And on the
taking her
weekends,
energy.
just yes. That was a similar thought that I had. It needed her energy in order to manifest.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like it's using her. Wow. That's
So
crazy.
her experiences actually were more like nightmares and stuff like that because she was fucking asleep the whole time she lived there.
Mm, yeah. I
And
feel
we
like
were
there's
seeing her
something
up walking
to
around.
dreams as well, and dreams and sleep paralysis. That's something I've had to deal with
Hmm.
a lot as well. That's all connected, and especially when you're in a haunted house, that seems to be that's there more as well. That's more powerful there. You're gonna have weird like I don't think this house that I'm in now. I've had experiences in this house, but I wouldn't say it's a super nasty feeling or whatever. When stuff has happened, it's been scary, but not like a dark feeling. But if I stay in a
Hmm.
hotel that I might get a bad vibe in, you have weird dreams, and I don't know. There's something to dreams as well, I think.
And the weird thing is, if you've ever watched the movie, it's
Oh, I just lost you there.
something that I've seen. Did you hear me?
I just lost you that last bit. Sorry.
Oh, I said something that I've thought about, like if anybody has watched the movie Insidious, is like, could she have been like astral projecting herself? Like she's
Yeah,
asleep and then we're seeing her and it's not her, but the feeling, you would think it would still kind of feel like her.
yeah.
But um And something that actually, as we were talking, that I remembered, my cousin Brittany saying is they had this old ass minivan while they lived there with the sliding doors, and um the driveway was not really on a slump, like going down or anything. It was relatively flat, and they were all in the minivan, and my uncle had hopped out to go run back into the garage and grab something, and it was just the girls in the car, and the brakes went out and it started rolling backwards, and it rolled backwards into the busy ass street right in front of our house with traffic coming both ways, and it went and it rolled all the way back through the street and was ass up in the ditch on the other side of the street. And there's no reason whatsoever for that to have happened there.
Wow, man.
So it was like an attempt on their life, like literally.
Yeah. Super interesting. Terrifying,
Yeah.
but super interesting.
I mean, if I sat here, I could probably think of like 1,000 more stories of stuff that they've told me, but it's just so hard because I almost kind of like blocked some of them out because they were about me. I know my grandma for sure saw me several times, but I can't just say, "Oh, well, she was losing her mind or she had dementia or whatever, and that's what she was seeing." Like some of that stuff, that there's no way. And I honestly cannot tell you uh what my grandma's bathroom looked like. Like there was such a feeling in her bedroom. I think I can count on one hand the amount of times that I went in her room.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you like went into her bedroom, you were like, "Let me get the fuck out of here."
Yeah. You just got that bad
It
vibe.
was like her bedroom, and then all the way in the farthest corner was the door to her bathroom, and then it like went, and so I never even got far enough into her bedroom to even fucking go into the bathroom. Like it could have been full of bodies for all I know. Like I never went in there. And so for her to say like she was seeing me dancing like at the foot, I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would never, with all the lights off too, let me get out of my bed, crawl across the hallway into your room and start dancing at the foot of your bed. Yeah, right.
That's terrifying. And the thought that there's something there that's probably nasty imitating
Mm-hmm.
you, and that's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
It takes you.
And you know,
Sorry, no,
oh,
you
go
go.
ahead.
I was going to say, no, you go first, and then I'll say. What was you
Well,
going to say?
I was just gonna say more kind of positive experience because she like, can you hear me?
I lost you for a second again there.
Dude, it's saying my freaking internet's unstable again.
Yeah,
But like
I've got full bars. I don't know why it's we started something. We
because it's
started
me.
something.
Yeah, it's because it's
they're,
me. I'm haunted.
they're listening
Um,
to us now.
for those of you watching on YouTube, congrats, you just saw a poltergeist on your screen. No, yeah, she would say like she would see grandpa get into bed with her and stuff with him. But at the same time, it's like what was really getting in the bed with her.
Yeah. Wow. Terrifying, man. When I was in my old haunted house, I had an experience where I was in my mum and dad's bedroom and I was messing about. I can't remember what I was doing, but I was in there just playing in front of their mirror, being silly. But a lady walked past me, a naked lady walked past me with blonde hair, and it looked like my mum. So I just thought it was
Mm.
my mum. It's gone straight into her bedroom, into her bath, her ensuite in their room. It's walked past me, and I've just gone, "Mum," and just started talking as if my mum's walked into the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom. I've
Mm-hmm.
literally walked into the bathroom talking, and there was no one in there. So it's
So
literally,
similar
yeah.
situation.
And I never put it down to being something imitating my mum until now. Until now, I've always, because I ran downstairs. Obviously, I freaked out. I ran downstairs and I was like, "Mum, you just walked past me, and she was fully clothed, standing there, like, no, I haven't walked past you. And yeah, so that's just now clicked that could be something pretending to be my mum. Like, and that's freaky, man.
No shit. Like that's the scariest part about it is something imitating a living person. Because you
Yeah,
hear all the time like, "Oh, I saw my dead Uncle Joe," or "I saw like the ghost of this person who died in my house." And it's like, what do you do when it's like living fucking people walking around your house?
yes, crazy.
And again, like with all the religious icons that my grandparents had in there, on every wall. When I look back at old family videos of, on the camcorder, all I see are little pictures of Jesus, little pictures of lambs, um, scripture, everything. It was just, there was no reason for that type of activity to be in there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because you say that normally, like when I talk, because I'm religious, I'm Christian, but when
Mhm.
I talk to a lot of Christian friends, say to me, you shouldn't talk about the stuff that you talk about, and you shouldn't be looking into the paranormal like you look into it. I don't know, like,
I don't actually think there's anything wrong with talking about it. I think if you're dabbling into dark occult practices and trying to channel spirits or
that's
talk
different.
to
Yeah,
deceased people, or you're that, because there is scripture about like soothsayers and people calling up the spirits of the dead and stuff like that, that you should not do that.
yeah,
Um that's almost like necromancing and stuff like that. I don't think you should do anything that would open yourself up to a trickster spirit, like a demon that's going to pretend to be a loved one that's passed on, or
yeah,
but just intellectual conversation about it, or like hearing other people's experiences with it. It's like healing and soothing in a way, like, hey, I'm not crazy.
yeah,
And no,
yeah,
you're not crazy either, because I've seen it too. So it's like validating other people, and I think that can be very helpful, especially for the I don't know if you do this, but like even just a random Joe Blow who has had all this paranormal stuff happen to them send you a message on Instagram, and I've gotten messages like that where people were um trying to tell me things that had happened to them and felt comfortable expressing that to me because they knew I was going to believe them.
yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it when people message me their experiences, whether I know them or not.
Mhm.
It's hard to talk about this stuff, especially if you're surrounded by people that don't believe it or don't want to talk about it.
Mhm.
It's hard to cut. Like, I never used to, like, before doing the podcast and listening to podcasts, I didn't talk about this sort of stuff, and I didn't like talking about. I thought talking about it's gonna, which I think it could do, possibly invite it a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it does. I love hearing people's, whether they want to come on the show or not, if they just want to tell me and get a bit of advice, and just to talk to someone that they know is going to believe them, as you said.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, and I think some people just don't have a choice, like my family. Like we did not welcome anything. If anything, we were trying to like cash it out, and we were trying to uh walk the straight and narrow, and all this stuff was happening, and it's like not really a choice for some people. And I think that sucks. And if I had a choice, I would never see a ghost again in my life.
yeah,
But it interests me because I have seen it. And I don't know if you listened to this episode, but I recently just went to an orphanage that was converted into a hotel, and I stayed there, and I was like thinking in the back of my mind, staying here by myself is going to be bad because I already kind of attract weird stuff in anyways. And I'm gonna go stay at this Masonic haunted orphanage where like kids died, and like um I didn't make it through the night. My husband had to come up there. He stayed with me because the TV was like turning itself off and shit. And I was like, okay, done with that. Bye. Actually, I didn't leave,
Whoa.
but I did. I was gonna stay by myself. I promise. I was gonna try, and it just kept the later in the night that it got. I was just I could not. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm just gonna just lay here with my eyes open all night. So he came and stayed the night with
Yeah.
me. But
God, you're braver than me. I wouldn't have even attempted to do that.
I
Wow.
tried, and I even walked around the entire outside of it and took videos, and I found the Masonic cornerstone where the Masons had built this place, and they actually found child bodies all over the grounds of the establishment after it had been abandoned. And then over time, people just kind of buried that story. Somebody bought it, fixed it up, turned it into a wedding venue, and people are actually saying their vows on top of this old filled in swimming pool where they like found bodies and all this. Is can you imagine like saying your vows on top of a
Oh,
cursed?
that
And
can't be
so
good.
I covered it, right, and I covered it in an episode, and I you know walked around the entire place by myself and went outside at night and took videos, and um it was like oddly quiet, like beyond just quiet. It was like quiet, quiet. You could hear a freaking mouse squeak a mile away, and just kind of sinister like that. The room, though, was the TV wouldn't stay on, the air conditioning unit was clicking itself off, and I just was not about to stay there by myself. And then the next morning, we went down for breakfast, and we were the only people staying at this orphanage. And I swear out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone come around the staircase. So it was like the kitchenette area where they had all the breakfast food laid out, a huge grand staircase, and then another room on the other side of the staircase. And I swear I saw someone walk around the staircase and looked, and there was no one there.
Wow.
But they have statues of little children everywhere.
But still
And
in the hotel.
yeah, they have statues of children all over the hotel. I don't know if you ever
Man.
watched a movie called A Haunting with Liam Neeson, where they go, it's supposed to be like a sleep study, but they go to this haunted mansion and there's little children faces and heads all over the mansion. That's what it looked like. I mean, it was
Man.
creepy.
Yeah. Wow.
It's almost like pay homage to the fact that that place was a death zone for kids when it was
Yeah.
an orphanage.
Did you get a really bad vibe when you was there as well? Like you could feel that
Um,
bad energy?
during during the night, yes. During the day, they have it so decorated and so pristine, like landscaping and fountains and all this stuff, because it's a wedding venue and it's supposed to be beautiful and pastoral and all those things, and it is. Um, but during the night, you kind of wonder, like, where did they find the bodies at? They have this Auschwitz style chimney in the back of the establishment. You wonder why the fuck they needed that. There were pictures that were posted in a newspaper of a little sweatshop that they had, where they had these orphan kids making tires and shit and not paying them a cent. And they tore that down, and you're walking around the grounds like, where was that at? You're trying to piece together in your mind what they've covered up.
Yeah.
And it's just really weird when you're walking through that kind of history, and people are getting married there and they just have no idea whatsoever
Yeah.
what it
I'm
used to
sure
be.
a lot of people wouldn't want to say their vows in a place like that if they knew some of the stuff that took
No,
place there.
never. They would never want to say they're, and on top of that, there was it was built by the Masons, and we don't have to get into the conspiracies about stuff like that, but uh one of the largest Masonic temples in the United States is in the same town where this orphanage is.
Wow.
in
Interesting.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. Wow. That's
It's
another episode.
yeah, it's crazy though. Anybody who wants to hear more about it, I did post a lot more information on my Patreon, walking around and kind of like it's different when you can see it. I'll just
Yeah.
say that, but I'm into all this stuff. I don't really feel like it's welcoming anything in. I feel like it's an investigation and I'm just looking for answers. I didn't bring see, my thing is like I didn't go there and like take a Ouija board out and start being like, oh, does somebody want to talk to me? I don't care if somebody wants to talk to. I didn't bring a spirit box. I didn't do an EVP session. I just went and observed and kind of researched the building itself, ate a 5-star breakfast, got the fuck out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm going to share all the links. So if people want to check that episode out, they can head over there now and check it out because that's awesome.
thank you.
Wow. You've had some incredible experiences.
Well, I'm honored to join you for this episode because it's enjoyable for me to talk about because my podcast is not solely dedicated to the subject. So I love to go on a show like this and kind of just let all of that ghosty stuff fly because it's part of what I do, but it's not solely dedicated to the paranormal.
Yeah.
And when I do talk about stuff like that, my fucking internet cuts out. So
Yeah.
how am I going to have a podcast with no internet?
It was all going so well until we mentioned the Nephilim. And then it just
There
went.
you go. You said it. We're going to have to end the episode now.
No. Julia, I have loved talking to you tonight. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you and your show?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Again, I'm Julia. I am the host of the Cosmic Peach podcast. I'm wherever you dick around with podcasts, Apple, Spotify. I'm on YouTube. I don't post every episode on YouTube. I always say that because I'm not trying to get taken off. I do have a Patreon that you can subscribe to. It's Room 237. And I just post some bonus content over there. And I'm trying to think. Oh, my Instagram is cosmic.peach.podcast. Like I was saying earlier, if you want to just hit my line, want to come on the show, you got something weird that's happened to you got a conspiracy theory, something like that, I'm always down to listen to anyone and what they have to present. So I like making new friends. It's a weird world. It's better with friends.
100%. You put out your vibe, you find your tribe. That's what I always say.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much. You're welcome back on Let's Get Freaky anytime. And I hope this is the first
you.
of many conversations. So thank you so much.
Thank you.